The other day, I was playing Night Rain in my off time, and I was kind of just having fun with the new DLC. Something I learned, however, while I was playing said DLC, was that people really enjoy butt humor in that game. The amount of times that I got handed the Staff of the Avatar or some other weapon with the ground slam ability on it was honestly staggering if I was playing Undertaker. Now, I'm gonna assume this just has to do with, her scaling stats and nothing else the Undertaker is associated with. However, receiving those weapons got me thinking, can you beat Elden Ring with your butt? AKA, can you beat Elden Ring with ground slam? The rules of the run are pretty self-explanatory. I am only allowed to do any kind of damage with ground slam. There is one exception to this, but I will cover that later. For those of you who have no idea what ground slam is, and for those of you who may need a quick refresher, ground slam is an Ash of War that makes you jump into the air and then come crashing down butt first. It has a pretty small AoE that comes with it, and all in all does pretty decent damage. That being said, it is a very slow attack, and from what I've seen, it is probably the slowest attack in the game. I'm sure it'll fare amazingly against the super speedy bosses of Elden Ring. Anyways, I think I've been yapping for far too long. Let's get into the video. So starting off, I choose the Confessor class. May seem like a strange choice, but here let me explain my logic just a little bit. The Ground Slam Ash of War scales mainly with strength, but you also need a decent amount of mind to use it. Additionally, there's an upgraded version of Ground Slam called Erdtree Slam, which you can get much later in the game. The thing about Erdtree Slam is that it scales exclusively with Faith. After reviewing all the starting classes' stats, I decided Confessor probably had the best layout for me. They had a good mix of strength, faith, and mind. That being said, I would be a liar if I didn't say that the fashion may have played a small, and I do mean small, part in it. Once I'm free to move around, I run straight through the tutorial, kick the Grafted Scion for good luck, and then plummet to my death. After experiencing the Breath of the Wild moment, it's already time to get straight to business. First off, I run through the Gatefront runes to grab everything I need, i.e. a map, the Ash of War stick, and Torrent. I then use Torrent to run over to Mistwood, which is where the Ground Slam beetle sits. Now here's the issue. In order to get the Ash of War, you need to kill the beetle. As I said, I cannot damage things without Ground Slam, which means I technically can't kill the beetle. Now, normally this could be circumvented by finding a weapon with the Ash of War you need, and then using that Ash of War to kill the beetle. But the issue is, Ground Slam isn't the base Ash of War for any weapons. So technically this means we already hit a fail point, sort of. I had a rough idea, and I do mean it was rough. In Mistwood, there are a couple rune bears. Rune bears, aside from being Satan's spawn, happen to be very aggressive towards everything. Enemies, bosses, and yes, even beetles are all their prey. The thing is, since rune bears are hyper aggressive, they can kill me super fast, and I do have to take a considerable walk to get the first rune bear over to the beetle. Even worse, RNG. If the rune bear uses any of its slow attacks, the beetle will just disappear because it sees me, obviously. It took many tries to get this right, and in the end of the day, I had to sort of resort to a middle ground. What I'm saying is I smacked the beetle. This did not kill it, this barely did any damage as it was my bare fist. I simply did this so that it would stay present for long enough to get hit by the rune bear. The bear then swiped the beetle and me, killing me, but also killing the beetle in the process. Like I said, a rough plan, but surprisingly one that worked. So with the Ash of War in hand, let's actually test the damage. Honestly, not bad. Right now, Ground Slam only scales with weapon damage and strength, so it'll perform best on a heavy, high-strength scaling weapon. The broadsword obviously isn't that, but I could fix that very quickly by running down to the coast of Limgrave and buying a club. The club already has an A scaling in strength, which gives my Ground Slam a decent amount of damage. I decided the first boss I'd try my Ground Slam on would be the demi-human chieftains, which live in the cave that were right next to the merchant that I bought my club from. The damage could have been better, and to top it all off, the demi-human chieftains have backup in the form of little demi-humans, so honestly this fight was a nightmare to start with. On top of that, I'm gonna be perfectly frank, I don't know the demi-humans moveset. Yeah, I've played this game plenty of times, but I just never bother to learn the demi-humans moveset. Keep in mind, when I'm playing these games, I'm very much stuck in the Bloodborne frame of mind, meaning I'm way too aggressive at any given moment. What this means for me right now is that I was way too aggressive, tried to trade blows with the demi-human chieftains, ran out of flasks, and then proceeded to get slapped into next Tuesday. Alright, so they weren't the best boss to start with, so let's try something else. Morgott. Oh boy, if I thought the demi-humans were bad, I was in for a real treat. Morgott has high health, high damage, and worst of all, he cannot be staggered in the same way the demi-humans can. This means it's literally impossible to trade with him, which was my strategy up until now. I tried many times, but I realized pretty quickly this wasn't working, so it was time to rework the game plan. I started by running around like a headless chicken, picking up as many smithing stones as I could. I almost shed a tear when I saw the amount of damage I did to this troll, as up until now I was really feeling like this run was going to be a bit of a lost cause. After killing the troll and getting the rest of my smithing stones, I committed one of the great sins of Elden Ring by killing Alexander. I'm sorry, Pop Bro, but 5% extra damage is not worth keeping you alive till the end of the game. I want my 10% boost now. I mean, 10% isn't even that much of a boost in damage, but perhaps this gave me a little boost in confidence, as I started to do much better against Morgott. I still had to give up after a bit, mainly because I was getting tired and really banged up, but still, progress is progress. At this point, I already hit a bit of a brick wall, so I decided I'd try to fix said brick wall by cheating. By executing this cheese on the Knight Cavalry perfectly, oops, well maybe my runes are still there. I should have just swallowed my pride and searched it online. With the only source of cheap runes available to me now sitting somewhere in the void, I realized there was nothing for it. I had to put my teeth to the grinder and just put the work in. After many attempts against Morgott, I beat him. I'd love to say there was this grand, oh, this is the strategy, this is how I did it. No, I just learned his timings, I dodged when he needed to dodge, and I got damage where I knew I could get guaranteed damage. I'll say this right now because I don't want to get your guys' hopes up. I am not doing every boss including DLC. As a matter of fact, I probably won't be doing every demigod. Put simply, it would be too hard and too time consuming. After the fiasco with Morgott, I realized how important it would be to get my damage as high as possible, so I went on another bit of a grind. First off, I gathered as many smithing stones as possible, including the bell bearings that I needed. I then ran over to Stormvale Castle, somehow killed this knight in the first try, killed his brother in the first try, and picked up one of the most important things for the run, the brick hammer. The brick hammer is a great hammer with high base damage, and most importantly of all, S scaling in strength. This would significantly boost my damage once I had enough strength to use it. Not wanting to wait to use it, I ran over to Fortnite Jail, picked up the Star Scourge heirloom, boosting my strength to the point where I could just meet requirements by two-handing the weapon, and the damage is good. Not real good, but at least it's good. Well, no time like the present, let's try taking on Godrick. Somehow, I managed to almost kill Godrick on my first try despite that pitiful damage. Once I got him to phase 2, Godrick gets significantly easier, as a good chunk of his attacks leave him wide open when he's using the dragon arm. That being said, I still wasn't able to first try him, thanks to the fact that I am one of the greediest people on this planet. Well, if I did that well on the first try, maybe I could get him. Oh, yeah. Luckily on the next attempt after that, I was finally able to get my act together and kill Godrick. 4 tries on the first proper demigod boss isn't that bad, and honestly, I'm very happy with it. That means Renal is next, so it's off to Raya Lucaria to take care of business. For some reason, before I entered the academy, I tried desperately to take out Smaragd, but since the devs at FromSoft can't design a fair dragon fight if you put a gun to their head, I died way too many times and ended up having to give up. I then took my frustration out on the wizards, who died in one hit, before going to the only early game boss that I was dreading. Red Wolf can be absolutely terrible with slow weapons, so I can't imagine this will go well with Ground Slam only. To be fair, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I actually did a really good amount of damage to him per hit. The issue was just finding the openings to hit him. The only time I found it safe to actually land the full Ground Slam was after he did one of his dive bomb attacks. Those are few and far between, so this fight just consisted of me running around in circles, waiting for that attack, whiffing one of my Ground Slams, running in circles, and then finally killing him. It was messy, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Well, if Radwolf was challenging, surely Renalo would be. Let's face it, if you have any kind of melee weapon, you're gonna absolutely rinse her health bar. And in my case, I have a plus 13 brick hammer, and I may not be able to attack with it, but Jesus Christ, the butt does enough damage so it doesn't matter. Well, that was a nice break. Let's get back to the challenge part of the challenge run. I decided my next stop would be Leyndell. The Draco Tree Sentinel, which is usually the bane of my existence, actually wasn't that bad. The Ash of War could stagger him in a single hit, and even though he could get retaliations off really fast, it only took a couple tries to finally nail his patterns down. After him, the run through Leyndell is pretty quick, as if you know where you're going, Leyndell is one of the easiest dungeons in Elden Ring. Seriously, if the strongest thing you have in your dungeon is just another reskin of the Asylum Demon, every single player is going to run straight through you. Goldfree was another fight that I was genuinely afraid of, but wasn't really that bad. Sure, it took a couple attempts to get his patterns down, but I could stagger him reasonably enough that the fight wasn't too hard. Sure, he hit like a truck, but that doesn't matter when I could jump over most of his attacks. Now, Morgott. I'm sure all of you, myself included, were expecting Morgott to be one of the hardest fights of the run. It would only make sense if he was. He hits hard, runs fast, and spends half the fight in the air jumping around like a lunatic. But would it surprise you that it only took me 2 tries to beat Morgott? Something I will level with you guys is Morgott is my all-time favorite boss in base Elden Ring, so I know his moveset very well. I also happen to know where his widest windows are, and thanks to the fact that I do have Margit's Shackle because I killed Patches earlier, we don't talk about that. Even if I didn't get a good opening, I could always force one. The winning fight ended up playing out something like this. I used Margit's Shackle as soon as I was close to him, making sure not to waste my stamina to get up to him. This stunned him, and then I was able to get 2 ground slams off. The second ground slam poise broke him, allowing me to get a 3rd ground slam. I waited for my stamina to recharge, used Margit's Shackle again, repeated the process, getting him to phase 2. During phase 2, he has some slower attacks, which were perfect for landing ground slams. The main attacks I was looking for was his Spear Toss as well as any of his Blood Flame attacks. With his Spear Toss, I could time my bounce perfectly so that I would dodge the spear and then land immediately on his head. The Blood Flame attacks, as I said, are very slow, so I could get 1 or 2 ground slams in if needed. After that, it just took 1 more ground slam to take out the really edgy Omen, leaving us free to enter the mountaintops of the Giants. At this point, I did another round of Smithing Stone collection, and decided it was time to go for another boss I was dreading. Perhaps I was just happy about beating Morgott, and I was hoping the other bosses wouldn't be so bad. The boss in question is Radahn, and the reason I was scared of him was that he likes to strafe a lot. Luckily, I've learned enough methods to handle Radahn, so I didn't even need the summons to beat him. On top of that, my damage is very good for this stage in the game. The first attempt with Radahn honestly went great. I got him down to phase 2, and then he proceeded to combo me into oblivion. Good stuff. Attempt number 2 went similarly, except this time I died much quicker. Attempt 3, however, proves the saying, 3rd time's a charm, right? As I was able to kill him. I just waited for the perfect opening, ground slammed him 3 times, staggering him, ground slammed him again. He went for his meteor, I ground slammed him again during the meteor, bringing him under half health for phase 2. During phase 2, I just waited for his more dramatic attacks, such as the drill or when he pulls the meteors out, as those were a guaranteed opening for a ground slam. Patience was the key during this fight, as I couldn't attack him during his regular combos, but honestly, Radahn uses his special attacks enough, allowing me to secure a very quick victory. I then watched China drop the nukes, and immediately make my way over to the bomb site. Now it's time for a boss you have all been waiting for, a boss so gut-wrenchingly terrifying that it has blocked players from certain endings for generations. I am of course talking about the all-feared and dreaded Mimic Tier. I know, just saying the name brings a shudder to my lips. Luckily, the Mimic Tier was feeling generous today as she tried to slap me for some reason. I have no idea why. I could one-hand the weapon by this point, I guess it was feeling slap happy. So after a few ground slams, I could lay this absolute unit to rest. What a Chad. Now it's time for the not-so-great part of this run, Valiant Gargoyles. Now, by all means, the Valiant Gargoyles shouldn't have been possible. They are the epitome of everything that's wrong with Ground Slam. They have fast attacks that I cannot punish. They move around a lot, meaning that I can't always land my Ground Slams. They have range, they have poison, there's 2 of them, there's so much going wrong here. Yet somehow, I beat him in 4 attempts. Mind you, I'm not a high level, I'm like level 60 at this point, which sure is okay for mid-game, but still, it surprised me how quickly I beat them. I've struggled more with the Valiant Gargoyles on non-challenge runs. The winning strategy ended up being running to the back right corner, waiting for the gargoyle to get to me, and then dropping his health to half. At this point, the second gargoyle would jump down, but since he was all the way at the front left side of the arena, it gave me ample time to finish off the first gargoyle. I could then focus down the second gargoyle for a relatively easy win. With that, I ride the coffin upwards and make it to Deep Root Depths. I don't plan on doing Fia's Champions or Fortis Axe, The reason I'm here is this fella right here. This particular reskin of the Asylum Demon happens to drop his weapon, that being the Staff of the Avatar. The Staff of the Avatar has the unique aGhoul, Erdtree Slam. For all intensive purposes, Erdtree Slam is just a better ground slam, so I knew it would be essential that I picked it up for this run. Killing Mr. Dark Soul was easy enough, and grabbing his staff I was so excited to use it that I forgot that it has a 24 faith requirement. That's okay, I guess I have plenty of laurel tears. I respect my character to use it, and the damage is actually not as great as I thought it would be. It's still better, mind you. My brick hammer at plus 16 was doing about 900 damage, and the Staff of the Avatar was doing about 1200 at plus 9, meaning that yeah, there's technically a damage upgrade there, except a huge issue was that Erdtree Slam does partial holy damage. Most bosses in base Elden Ring resist holy damage, so maybe technically math-wise it would have been better to use normal ground slam, but I'm gonna be honest, the idea of a butt slam so powerful it turns holy was just too funny to pass up. Another plus of using the Erdtree variant is that you could buff holy damage a lot more than physical damage, so to that end I went and grabbed the Holy Scorpion Charm, as well as the Holy Shroud and Crack tier. With this, my damage is about 1400 on a random Godrick Knight, which is acceptable. Taking a break from all that, I decided, what the hell, let's do Gold Mask questline. Honestly, these questlines are kind of fun, why don't I do them more often? Oh, after that mess of a scavenger hunt is over, I whisper sweet nothings into gold members' ears, finishing their quest for the next while. Feeling confident in my new damage, I decided it was time to try and take Fire Giant. Oh boy, do you need me to tell you that this was one of the biggest RNG fests of this video? Because I'll tell you, this was one of the biggest RNG fest of this video. The Fire Giant is the mandatory damage check of Elden Ring. We had it with 4 Kings, we had it with 1 Reborn, now we have it with Fire Giant. This fight was not pleasant. Normally the Fire Giant is a joke thanks to the fact that you could A, status him, and B, dodge all of his slow attacks. The issue is my attacks are about on par with the speed of the Fire Giant's attacks, which means I could barely squeeze in the tiniest bit of damage and then avoid a huge chunk of damage, and if I didn't dodge, it was pretty much my entire health bar gone. This was a mess is what I'm saying. This was very, very messy. On my first attempt, I managed to get him to phase 2, but at phase 2 I realized I did not actually have enough FP to take him out. On attempts 2, 3, 4, and 5, I died on phase 1 because I really was just not getting his dodge patterns right. And on attempt 6, I made it to phase 2, but died. That was like a 10-minute fight, by the way. That really, really hurt my soul. Attempt 7, however, was the winning attempt. I did the best I could on phase 1, got him to phase 2, and then prayed to God that he didn't do too many of his fire magic attacks. Whether it be good RNG or maybe I actually found something of a strategy, but I somehow managed to get him to keep doing his melee attacks, which are much easier to strafe than his actual magic attacks. And I realized pretty quickly into the first attempt, trying to hit his hands was completely pointless, so I just had to bite the bullet and hit his skin. He obviously doesn't take that much damage if you hit anywhere that's not injured already, but at least I could get consistent hits in this way. It took about 7 minutes for the second phase alone. Anyways, with enough patience and enough butt slams, I'm able to take out the Fire Giant, prompting Melina to then commit the Michael Jackson. The Bundercaker then passes out, winds up in Farum Azula, and it's here that the damage drops off like a rock. At this point, every other boss seriously resists Holy. Why did From Software do this? Maliketh is already a hard boss. Why does he take an 80% resist on Holy damage? Why? Never mind, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's start with the obvious. Godskin Duo. Now there may be a sort of affinity between me and the other butt slammers, but unfortunately I couldn't enjoy that too much, as these two would kill me very quickly. Now I've done enough challenge runs to know when something is a lost cause. This was when I realized the Godskins were a lost cause. Unlike every boss up until now, the Godskins didn't actually have any windows that I could hit them without getting punished, and they could kill me in seconds. I tried many times to get the fight to work, but it just wasn't, and I wasn't willing to go through another mess of RNG like the Fire Giant. So I resorted to something that maybe some of you will consider cheating, maybe some of you won't. As far as I'm concerned, this is technically failing the challenge, but just know this was for my own sanity. I resorted to Dolores. For those of you who don't know, Failing to do Seluvis' questline before he dies causes Pydia, you know, the random Albinauric in Caria Manor, to drop a different summon, Dolores the Sleeping Arrow. The name is about as self-explanatory as they come. She shoots arrows and they make you sleepy. Dolores is perfect for the Godskins fight because she's an NPC, which means she can dodge, and she doesn't do damage, and she puts bosses to sleep. This is a very niche summon, but it just happens to be so niche that it's perfect for this fight. Dolores could put one of the Godskins to sleep in about 6 hits, which although wasn't ideal, I could definitely work with it. So surely with Dolores in tow, I could handle the Godskins, alright? Wrong. The fight still was too much, and since I'm not planning on upgrading Dolores, she would die in like 2 hits. Okay, I think it's break time. After brainstorming for a bit, I decided I would go and try to tackle a few other bosses, level up a few times, and then handle the Godskins. I am not doing Malenia because I'm pretty sure she's impossible, so that leaves Mohg in DLC. I start by quickly adding Eleonora to the honestly staggering list of NPCs that are crammed somewhere between my character's cheeks, claiming the Bloody Crystal tier. She is then shortly joined by Mr. Beastclaw, Vike, Vare, and this fellow that they couldn't even bother to give a name. Okay, Mohg. How do I put this into words? I really wanted to do this fight legitimately. Like, really wanted to do it. Mohg is one of my favorite bosses in Elden Ring. I love his theme, I love his moveset, it's just a great boss in general. But the thing is, Erdtree Slam takes about as much time as a fully charged heavy. I don't know how many of you guys have tried to land a fully charged heavy attack on Mohg during his fight, but it's virtually impossible. There are a few openings here and there, but you gotta take into account things like the way the Erdtree Slam moves you. And because of this, sometimes you get hit by an attack that's not even an attack. Or how the Blood Flame staggers you out of it, or sometimes Mohg will straight up just knock you out of it. Like, there's so much that could go wrong in this fight. And it's not that I didn't give it its fair chance, mind you. I probably sunk about 30 attempts, but nothing. After so many attempts, nothing came of it. I could get him consistently to phase 2, mind you, but once phase 2 happened, all hell would break loose. Case in point, this fight I'm playing on the screen right now was about 20 minutes long from start to finish. 20 minutes. And it just ends by me getting one shot and him not even close to being dead. I figured out during one of these fights, mind you, there were a few like 10-20 minute fights in there, that Mohg actually only has 2 windows during phase 2 for me to hit him, and those windows are so temperamental and I cannot control them at all. The first window is if he does his jumping overhead slash, not the slam, mind you, not the one where he plants his staff in the ground, because then the resulting explosion and the follow-up slash will absolutely kill me, but the one where he does an overhead slash. That one, I could punish without getting hit. The only other thing I could punish was his Blood Flame Blade followed by really delayed slash. That left just enough window to hit him once, and mind you, this only worked if he didn't follow it up with Blood Flame Talon, which is something he did more often than not. This fight was not worth the drain on my sanity. I'm sure a few of you will be very upset that I did this. After all, Mohg is actually a major boss in Elden Ring. He is a remembrance boss, entrance to the DLC, all that, very important boss, but I'm cheesing him, I'm sorry. If I had thought the fight was feasible, I absolutely would have done it, but the thing is, I cannot see this fight being possible without hours and hours being sunk in to get literally a perfect match against him. And frankly, I don't have the time, and let's be real, neither do you. Another reason I felt doing this would be important was because I was thinking about it and I had kind of hit a brick wall on multiple fronts. I'd effectively ran into 2 brick walls, and without a way to pass either of them, I had to break one of them. With Mohg to be the first to escape the wrath of the almighty Krak, the cheeks are hungry for blood, and the only thing that will appease them is the death of the Godskins. Yes, that is a sentence I just said. I started my journey to squash the duo by upgrading Dolores as much as I could. Seeing as she was my only way to reliably damage the Godskins, it would be essential that I kept her alive for as long as possible. Now with my vastly upgraded health, mildly upgraded Dolores, and an assortment of buffs, I was finally ready to rematch the Godskins. Finally, after a long wait, something happened. Dolores put the noble to sleep, which let me comfortably finish off the apostle. I then got a pretty clean hit on the Godskin noble, prompting him to go into his crazy spin attack. Luckily, Dolores put him to sleep again like the absolute goat she is, allowing me to get another stagger off of him and kill him. There was a, shall we say, hairy moment when this happened, but luckily I was able to kill him with the shockwave. This let me then fight the Apostle one-on-one. Almost ended in my death a couple times, but thankfully I was able to scrounge a win. After a brief trot through Crumbling Pharaoh Missoula, it's already time for the next boss. Alright, Maliketh. Maliketh. What do I even say here? Well, to start, we all knew that he was gonna be the hardest boss in this run. He's wicked fast, hits like a truck, has damage over time, and worst of all, he moves around so much. Almost every attack causes him to reposition, which means that most of my attacks are gonna whiff on him. I will not lie to you. This was one of the most painful things I've ever done in a video. Day 1, I did about 20 attempts on him, and I just didn't get him past Beast Clergyman. That's how bad it was. He was so hard. And at this point, he could kill me in about 3 shots. By the time day 2 rolled around, I was honestly so fed up with it, I wound up summoning. But it was there I realized, I'm a goddamn challenge runner. I don't quit when the going gets tough. I thrive in it. It was time for me to stop trying to find the easy way out, the cheesy way out, the cheap way out, and just do the thing. And it was that logic that pushed me to fight Maliketh for almost 10 hours. The fight was so messy, it felt I was at the whims of Lady Fate the entire time. Did Maliketh do the right combo? Did he decide to throw pocket sand for 3 minutes? Did he immediately do the same attack twice in a row? Was that attack a punishable attack? There was so much that could go wrong, even right down to my positioning. If I just happened to be in the wrong spot, I'd either die or I'd miss a chance to hit him. It was so unbelievably finicky. Now, I may have been at the hands of Lady Fate, but that doesn't mean that I was completely hopeless. No, I was determined to beat this boss. I was gonna grab her by the collar and say, here's what we'll do. We got a lot of work here, me and you. The souls of your friends you and I must claim. You've got the body and I've got the brain. Gandhi said that. I was going to beat Maliketh no matter what. It wasn't a matter of if I'm gonna beat him. I knew I was gonna beat him. It was a matter of how and when, and do I have time for this? And here's sort of how the entire process played out. In the first 2 hours, it was a lot of the same, me dying to Beast Clergyman when he had like full health. But I did learn something very important here, and that was how to dodge most of Beast Clergyman's attacks. Now, the issue became actually finding an opening where I could land the attack unpunished. This was a lot harder, but 3 hours in, I saw it. It was slim and subtle, and most of you probably noticed it. But there was an opening. As a matter of fact, there were 3 of them. The first one was when he thrust his hand to the ground and did his Beast Claw attack. If I timed my jump perfectly with the ground slam to when he put his hand in the ground, I would jump over the Beast Claw. If I was a frame too late, he would destroy me. The second was when he would drag his dagger across the ground. I could circle behind him and then get another ground slam in. As long as he didn't follow it up with his pocket sand, I'd be fine. The third and final, mind you, the most rare of all of them, but also the easiest to punish, was his boulder toss. If I was close enough to his boulder toss where I could walk a few steps forward, I'd be fine. I could ground slam and get away unpunished. The issue was that's his far range punish and he almost never does it close range, so I was never close enough to really do this. There were a few odd times, but it was a lot less consistent than the other 2 openings. With this knowledge in hand, I was able to push him to phase 2, and maybe it would be like Godrick, where the boss is considerably easier in... Why do I do this to myself? Yeah, Maliketh was not easier than Garant. Not even close. If anything, he was much harder considering he only had 2 openings. One when he did his horizontal slash, which would prompt him to immediately go into a vertical slash, which, if I was quick enough, I could hit him. But if he followed it up with his signature Destined Death attack, I would immediately get punished and very, very hard. And the other was when he drove his sword into the ground, made a tiny explosion, and then backflipped. If I ran behind him while he was jumping, I could time my ground slam so when he backflips, he lands into the attack. This was by far the best opening, but it was also significantly more rare than the other opening. This fight took about 7 hours from here. 7 hours of the same fight over and over again. I tried so many different variations. I tried reworking my stats, even grinding a little, and it always ended in the same. But it was here I remembered something interesting. I believe it was a JK Leeds video, I'm not entirely sure. It was someone challenge running Dark Souls 3. I had watched it pretty recently, because I just had my first playthrough of Dark Souls 3, by the way. Literally the day I started this video, I beat Soul Cinder for the first time. Anyways, I was watching that video, and it was the way that person used their embers. Basically, whenever they got a boss to phase 2, they'd pop their ember, which would give them a huge health boost, giving them significantly better odds to beat the boss in phase 2. And I remember watching that and being like, wait a minute, that's actually really smart. Because normally I save stuff like embers, rune arcs, humanity, I save that kind of thing. So for the final attempt, I tried something very different. When I got Maliketh to a low enough point, I popped a rune arc. And this did so much for the fight. It gave me actually enough health to survive his destined death long enough to land the last few hits. Mind you, it was down to the wire. Low health, no FP, the works. But finally, after 10 hours of attempts, I was able to dodge the volley he threw at me, prompting him to do his horizontal slash, and I almost cried because I knew it was over. One final butt slam, booty to the ground, and the good boy goes down. Oh, okay. With Maliketh finally down, it's time to wrap up the game. If it wasn't obvious, I'm not doing Malenia or the DLC. I'm sorry, I know someone's gonna be very upset about that. But look, it took me 10 hours to beat Maliketh, who, when compared to Malenia and some of the DLC bosses, is actually really easy. I really don't think it's possible to beat any of them, especially Malenia with her lifesteal. Let's face it, I wouldn't do anything to that boss. That being said, I could still try to wrap up the game. At the Ashen Capital, I claimed the greatest prize of all, the Golden Underpants, which is the only fitting attire for this video. After that, I didn't want to make Gideon the butt of another joke, so instead I squashed him under mine. If there is one thing this Asher War has surprised me with is just how effective it is on NPCs, that leaves Godfrey. Aside from Morgott, Godfrey is probably my favorite boss. He's cool, he's got a lot of cinematic moments, and his combos are really satisfying to dodge. That being said, similar to Maliketh, he had absolutely no openings ever. Fantastic. At this point, what was left in my brain had turned into putty though, so I just brute forced it. I repeatedly slammed my head into the table until he entered Hoaraloo phase, popped a rune arc because at this point it took about 6 attempts to get there, and then attacked him every time he did a pile driver. His crazy dashing pile drivers are intimidating at first, but if you know when they're starting, you could actually run from them, and that would let me position myself perfectly to hit him while he's recovering from it. This was by far the best window to hit Hoaraloo, and after a few more butt slams, the man, the myth, the legend goes down. Now this is where, unfortunately, the run takes a turn for the worst. Radahn barely takes any damage from my butt slams. It's understandable, him and Elden Beast have really high holy res, and he has a lot more health than Maliketh and a lot more stance. At least he doesn't reposition himself like crazy, right? Right? I'm not gonna lie to you, I completely ran out of steam here. After many, many attempts, I finally got Radahn down, so that just leaves Elden Beast. Alright, let's test the damage, maybe it'll be decent. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Hey, we all know Radagon's the real final boss, let's be real. It was at this point I called it quits. When it comes to challenge runs in general, I find that they usually have a pretty natural life cycle, and although yes, I could level my character significantly, get the tankiest armor imaginable, and probably brute force my way through Radahn and Elden Beast, but that just doesn't sound fun. And then for those of you who said, well, what if you just do the same thing you did with Maliketh, where you put in the time, you put in the work, you really learned his combos and found his openings. I could do that, but I could also stick my foot into a wood chipper. Just to put it into perspective, for the final time I logged off, this entire run was 19 hours and 41 minutes. 10 of those 19 hours was Maliketh. It took more time to beat Maliketh alone than every other thing in the run combined. I am not going to put myself through that again. So it's here we finally find out that no, it's not possible to beat Elden Ring with Ground Slam. But you sure can get close. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and maybe even subscribing. My name's Christian, but most people know me as aGhoul, and I'll see you in the next video.